I want to say thank you all for coming this evening. This is a very different class, or I don't even say it's a class. It's kind of just like me talking. Usually this is Monday nights are about oracles classes, and I'm teaching some type of subject to give you some type of awareness and enlightenment so that you can further your path. But tonight I'm just going to sit down and talk about my path. And if you guys have questions during the time we're talking, feel free to ask, because I want you all to share things that you're going through on your journey, because the spiritual awakening is something that sometimes can be very confusing and you can feel like you're alone. So I want to just open the floor for anybody to come through and ask questions. If you're online, we got a lot of people online, and then anybody that's here in the room that would like to ask questions, feel free. You know, that's what we're here for. I want you all to get some education and understand about what's going on, and we're going to go from there. All right. So again, I want to say thanks you all for joining. And let me start with my story. Like, where did I begin in this? I would say, man, consciously about 15 years ago is where I really started walking in my path. And so it's 15 years ago, I actually started meditating, and that was my key. That's where I kind of opened up to everything. And I met this gentleman. First, let me back up a little bit. 15 years ago, I was deep into personal training. I was actually one of the top trainers around in Atlanta, in the country. I did a lot of different shows. I was probably on 10 syndicate shows for training years ago. And I would always meet people, and I work with a lot of people in the industry, so the entertainment industry. So they would always come in and ask me to change their bodies overnight. You know, we got a video shoot, or we got something we got to do. And it's like, I'm looking like, how many days I got? And he said, well, you got about 20 days. I'm like, huh? You want me to do this in 20 days? So it's okay. So I would change people's bodies literally exponentially overnight. And when I would do it, people were just like amazed, like, how are you doing this? How are you changing these people's bodies? And at that point, I really didn't know. This was 25 years ago. I really just didn't have a clue of how I was doing it. I just knew that things were happening and people were excited about it. You can slide that chair around here if you want to. Yeah, no problem. No. So it's so people were just asking, how are you doing this? Well, what was happening to me, and I never really spoke about this because I really kind of felt like kind of crazy, because people would, would look at me, I was strange, but I would literally get messages while I was training somebody and would say, no, don't do that, do this. And I'm looking like, well, so I just learned 25 years ago. I knew I was successful and things were very easy for me, so I just kept doing it. And the more I did it and the more I listened, the faster people's bodies changed. So that was my beginning with really tapping into what we call energetics or spirits or outside sources, crossing the veil and coming back. So people would always, or this energies would always tell me to do these different things. Then I got into competition training and started training some bodybuilders and fitness pros and bikini models and all these things. And the meal plans I would give them, I had a trainer that used to listen to me sometimes, and he would say, how do you sit here and look at people and you say, you had this for dinner last night, you had that for dinner last night, why are you eating this and you eating that, this is how much you're eating too much of this. And he was just saying, like, how does he know all that stuff? I never had a clue, honestly. I just thought it was me guessing, but every time I was very accurate. And it was just, I would tap into the person that I was training, and I would see, or I would know what they ate, because it would have different effects on their body. So from the outside looking in, it just looks like somebody, and if you really watch somebody's body, if they eat too much fat, they get a certain look. If they eat too many carbs, they get a certain look. If they're eating too much protein, they get a certain look. So all these things you can actually scientifically figure out, but I didn't have the knowledge back then. So that was 25 years ago. Finally, I started seeing all these numbers. Numbers just started being flooded into my life. It was like number after number after number after number. And I was wondering, okay, what do these numbers mean? And there was a young guy that came to me at that time, and he was under Jive Records, and he was like one of the biggest artists that were putting out at that time. His name was Titus Sleet, and he ended up going on doing pretty well, and he did good in the region that he was in, but it just wasn't for him because the industry he wasn't willing to play that game. So anyway, he was very spiritual, Native American. And he started explaining to me about the numbers. He said, if you don't like this stuff, if you're getting seeing numbers, get this book. So I got the book. And the book was like Angel Numbers 101, something like that. So I started following these numbers all over the place. And I was like, well, what does this mean? So, me being in a conscious mind and not being in a spiritual mindset, I was looking for the numbers, reading what the numbers meant, and I was physically looking for the change or looking for the shift. Well, it doesn't work that way. And I'm going to enlighten you all a little bit later on about that. But I kept looking for these changes because these numbers were telling me beautiful things. And I was like, well, when am I going to see it? So first of all, my eyes are wide open. I'm looking for it in the third dimension. It don't work that way. It comes in the fifth dimension. It comes through energy, and it's your energetic self that's changing. And as you change on the inside, then what's on the outside matches you. So I never knew that. So I just was still looking and looking and looking. So then I was like, oh, okay, whatever. So if you say this and say that, and he was like, yeah, you got a lot of power in this. I think, well, whatever. It's not me. And everybody said, no, it's you. I said, no, it's not me. I have no clue what this. I don't know any of this stuff. So then one day I started meditating, and oh my goodness, I started going on trips, major trips. And I was just like, how is this happening? And I was warned by people not to be doing that because I was tapping into the other side, and a lot of the ancestors of people that I knew that had passed were coming to me, and they were giving me messages. So I was like, well, wow, what is this? So now I'm just starting to know and learn that like, this is the level 1 of consciousness, awakening. So you get all these beautiful gifts, and I'll tell you, like, the first gift that you get is clairvoyance or clairsentience, clairaudience. One of the clairs usually will come to you, and you get very proficient at it. Now, some people stay in it, and if that's their path, and they actually develop it. For me, that was kind of my awakening, and I moved quickly into other things. And I'll again explain that as well. So I started to cross over into the other side, and I started to get all these messages, and then I started to help people and just give them messages. Now I'm consciously working with people and knowing that I'm getting messages and then passing the messages to them. And then people say, well, you have this uncanny ability to help people just become very calm, and you help them with your advice. And again, it's coming through me, it's not coming from me. So all these things were just more signs to push me. So I really started going hard in the fitness and really changing the physical body for people, and became very successful at it. I think I personally touched, and again, this was all part of my training from Spirit. I touched over 5,000 people and working with them, actually working with over 5,000 people. That's not just never meeting them, talking to them. I literally sat and talked and worked with people 5,000 plus over those 25 years. Yeah, so I literally did that for a long time. And I worked in corporations. I worked for Home Depot and developed their fitness centers and fitness programs for them back in the late 90s, and was very well with that. Traveled all over the country and up into Canada, and had 17 facilities at one time for them. And then I decided that I was going to do some things on my own. And that's when I stepped outside of that. But that's how I got all the experience, because I was all over the country working with all these people and showing them how to do fitness. And then I was putting together videos and different things to help people, and we put together a program that helped the company save a lot of money with workers' comp, because we were able to reduce back claims and neck claims because of a pre-work stretch program that we put together. But a lot of things, that was just part of the history. Then I, again, jumping back into my training and moving now towards opening a new gym, and this young guy was teaching me this stuff, and I was just learning and was on fire about it. And I just literally would go blindly into anything because I just didn't have no governor switch. If you understand what a governor switch is, it's a switch that doesn't allow a car or something, a motor, to run fast to reach its full potential. I had no switch. So I just was like pedal to the metal, and I'm just going as fast as I can, and whatever happens, happens. That is not probably the best thing to do because there was some very interesting, sticky situations that I got into because of that. So doing all this stuff with fitness was really teaching me, again, how to ground, how to read energy, working with people, just letting stuff come through me, and just learning to be obedient to whatever was coming. That was the whole purpose of my fitness. And then I started to really understand, probably about 15 years ago, I started the meditation process. about 12 years ago, I really started to tap into other things and to just find more out about spirituality. And about 10 years ago, I started to actually be able to help people. And 10 years ago, I started to be able to help people. And it was pretty interesting to me. I didn't know how I was doing or how I was working, but the energy was just running through me. I was just getting signs all the time, all over the place. Then I started seeing things all the time, and I started to wonder what was going on. But again, during this first part of the period, I was too really afraid to talk about it because nobody really would understand me, and I wasn't in a community that was into this. So I just was like, I guess I'm alone on this journey. So I went deeper into spirit, deeper into meditation, more meditations, and then I just started building a family of spirits that would come around me all the time, and it would always stay close to me. Then I started really tapping in, and I made that commitment. And when I made the commitment, this is what happens, and this is why initiations are so important to understand. When you make a certain commitment, then you have to let the old self go. Well, for a couple of years, I was straddling the fence, trying to use my three-dimensional mind to gain material wealth and whatever I was looking for, and then use the spiritual mind to gain spiritual wealth and whatever I was looking for. And what happened was I was straddling that fence. What happens when you straddle the fence too long, you're gonna fall on it. And that's exactly what happened. I fell on the fence and lost everything. Was homeless for like 18 months. You know, living where I could live with some people here, live with some people there. And then finally, I think for the last 10 months of this time period, this is probably in 2010, 2011, I actually started living in my office. And I lived there for 10 months, somewhere around, I can't remember, 8 to 10 months, I would just say. And that's when I was in the business and probably had a expensive gym, probably $500,000, and was just like, why is this draining so much from me? It's because I was still trying to stay in the fitness business and then still trying to do the spiritual work, but I was trying to use the 3 dimension to run the 5th dimension, and it doesn't work that way, you know. So I lost everything and humbly bowed down. And as soon as I did that, I moved into the office, and literally I started seeing everything. I was being shown everything that was going on around the office, and I was able to clean it up, turn it around, and made a lot of money. And I was doing it now through spirit. I wasn't doing it through the 3-dimensional mindset. I was letting spirit guide me, and I was living through a spiritual essence versus, let's say, spiritual virtues I was using versus, you know, the 3-dimensional push and bull, you know, and trying to just rush things and move things around and egotistically make it work for me. I stopped doing that. And then one night I was in the gym, and again, I was just still trying to get into the spiritual side. So it wasn't like a jump and I switched and I was just all over here. I understood what was happening, so I was following the lead, but you know, you're still in your human body, and that's what we got to understand. We're spirits living a human experience, and we got to remember that. And what happened to me was one night I was talking to a friend, and she was in another state on the phone, and I remember I was just in my sorrows, and I probably drank, probably about a 5th of liquor, and probably smoked 3 or 4 cigars, and I was really just done. And I was just like, probably got close to alcohol poisoning, and I knew I was just kind of fading out, but I was just like, oh, I don't know really what's going on. And all of a sudden, and this is something that I started to pick up on every night around 10:30, 11 o'clock, you'd hear like footsteps walking through the gym. And I was just like, this is really weird. And then one person, nobody believed me. And then somebody finally stayed in there with me till about 10:30. And they were like, what is that? I said, I told you. I said, every night around 10:30, you're gonna hear these footsteps, and it's a woman. And so they were like, oh, I'm getting out of here. So they left, and they didn't return for that. It's like, I'm not doing that again. Now that is to say, that night I was in my office, and I had a couch, and I would sleep on the couch. I was in the office, and I heard the footsteps, and all of a sudden, the door pushes open. And I'm just like, oh boy, I don't know what's going on here. Now, this is probably the first time I actually had a physical encounter. And so remember, I'm like drunk off I couldn't have stood up if I wanted to. And I remember as soon as the door was probably about where you are, and I was probably about here. All of a sudden, I just started crying profusely. And it was like tears it was like I was being flushed. Everything was just coming out of me. And I started talking crazy. The woman was like, what is going on with it? And she was thinking I was committing suicide or something. And I was like, no, I'm not doing none of that. That's correct. No, that's not happening. So I'm just sitting there crying. And I just put the phone down, just kept crying. And all of a sudden I felt an energy walk to me. And then the energy walked to me and laid on top of me. And all I remember was feeling like, if you ever touched a 9-volt battery to your tongue, that's how my whole body felt. So it was electricity just running through me. And literally, for about 30 seconds, it just ran and the tears just stopped. And I felt this overwhelming sense of joy. And I was like, what in the world is going on? Then I stood up. Every bit of inebriation gone, completely gone. It was just taken out of me. And that was the first time a spirit actually entered my body and took something from me. And then from that point on, that's when the business actually just took off. And it just went into a whole nother direction. And then I was able to get this home and start to build here. And probably it's about another 3 or 4 years I was in the gym business. And about 4 or 5 years ago now, I stopped. And some clients I still train here and there just so I can get myself and try to keep myself in shape. But for the most part, 90% of my work, 95% of my work is spiritual work. And it's done in this house. Now, when I first saw this house, I was like, there's no way in the world I'm getting this house, because I remembered working all those hours in the gym business. If you know anything about the gym business, you're up at 5 o'clock in the morning and you're not leaving until 9:30, 10 o'clock. So that was every day, kind of like hairdressers. You know, every day, all day, except it's not just the weekend. It's like Monday through Saturday. And if you allow it, Sunday is going to do it to you too. So I was just like, man, there's no way in the world I can keep this house up. And then something pulled me back again. I said, well, maybe I could do this and this and this. Okay, maybe I can do this and this and this. And the next thing I know, I was like, oh, I'm getting a house. And then I ended up being pulled into the house. I knew the house was a 9 house, but again, that was 10 years ago. I really didn't understand numerology and numbers the way I understand them now. The 9 house was a healing house, not just for me, but it was a place for people to come and heal. So that's why we have meditations here, we have drum circles here, we have classes here. I do all my spiritual energy work here. Everything goes on in this house that works with me spiritually. So on this journey, I've been just led to different places, and you got to follow. Now, that's kind of the gist of the things that have been phenomena that happened to me when that was one phenomenon that happened to me, but there's been several that happened to me before I moved here. Now, one of the other things I want to share with you is before, when I was probably 26, 27 years old, I was riding motorcycles, and some people have heard me tell this story before. And I was on a bike, hadn't been on a bike for 10 years, had no business riding with these guys. They pulled me into a curve, and pulling into a curve means they took off and left me, so I tried to catch up like an idiot, and the curve bent hard right. Well, they turned hard right, and of course, I'm trying to catch them. I finally see him, so I try to make the turn hard right. I'm going 70 miles an hour, and a big truck comes right in front of me. And I'm about to hit this truck T-bone straight up at 70 miles an hour. And I remember saying at that moment, I'm not going to die today. That's it. And I just was complete conviction, I'm not going to die today. And literally, something came from my left side, picked that bike up and turned it, and I went down the street. And to this day, the guys that I rode with laugh, and they say, man, I don't even know how you turned that bike. It looked like you jumped off the bike and was running on the side of the bike and then on the truck and then jumped back on the bike and drove. Wow. That's what they said. I don't know what happened. I just remember something came from the left, turned that bike and went to the right. So thinking about those things, I started to realize that I had a purpose and I needed to be doing something. And maybe these are the reasons I'm having these spiritual encounters and understanding more now. So then back probably during the beginning, 10 years ago or 15 years ago, I would start journaling things. And literally things that I would write down in my journals, I didn't really realize what they were until about 2 years ago. When I actually happened to find the journals and start looking through them and say, oh man, wow, I used to really write back in the day. And literally things that I was asking and things that I was asking for all came true. Everything happened. So it's important to always journal so that you can understand what's coming to you in the future, because you might not understand everything right now. Then some of the other things that happened was I started getting deep into meditation. And when I was here again, this is a very spiritual house. So the energy in here was so different that I got a hold to in understanding the seals of Solomon. And I got a hold of one of his seals. And of course, again, I was 100 miles an hour, no governor switch. I activated it. So that brought some energy in. Okay. So that changed the whole game, because at that point I was just kind of working with people, and I could kind of do little things here or there, shift energy and transmute things. Didn't really get the full understanding of it. But when that happened, I literally felt an energy come into that room in there. And just like the time I was in the office and started crying, I walked through this energy and literally just started crying, just bawling, just what in the world is going on here. And then I kept seeing this deity that was in the Egyptians, or part of the Egyptians, they call them Netters, Tahuti. I kept seeing this image, and I didn't know who he was, and I didn't really understand him back then, but I kept seeing it. Well, this was his energy that came in. And when I tell you couldn't walk through the areas almost so thick of an electric charge that you couldn't move. My buddy Eric was here. I said, hey, come here. He got to the door and he started crying. So he couldn't even get in the door. And he was like, I don't know what's going on. And I said, I don't know what just happened. This is what I did. And he walks out, goes in to get into the truck that's in the back. And he looks, and there's two beams of light coming straight into the window, coming to an altar that I had in there at that time. And those two beams of light stayed there for about 2 years. And for 2 years, I literally went through non-stop training, non-stop education. So at night, I was being taught by spirit how to do different things. And so I went on journeys through Egypt, and it was like I was actually in Egypt. I was doing things that probably people would not believe if I told them. And actually, I would go into meditations. I would come back and sands would be in my hands. And I was like, how am I doing this? Bringing things from other dimensions. But all this is because I needed to see the truth in different travelers, the different abilities to travel. Then I learned how to actually activate the Merkaba, or the Merkaba, which is in your body. Everybody has one. It's around your body, rather. And that's when I went the furthest. And that's when I almost died. And like I said, it's not always good to just go head first and not pay attention. I remember going, and I learned how to astral project, and I learned how to travel. Well, first of all, astral projection is one thing. Merkaba travel is something totally different. I learned how to travel in Merkaba, and I would jump out of my body, and I would go through all these different places and these different cosmos and lands. And you can actually, once you learn it, you can tap into any ascended master that walked this earth, and they will literally sit down with you and have a conversation. So I would do this like for months, and it was just a lot of fun to me. Well, I don't know what happened. One day, it's 18 breaths. I did something with that 18 breath, and I remember whenever I go to this cosmos, I would like, whoosh, I would take off, and I was like going for light years, just flying. And it was a while to get there. And when you got there, you're just like, wow, this was a journey. But I never felt like I didn't want to come back. I always said, okay, well, it's time for me to go now. I'll come on back. So I would do this, and I would love it. I would enjoy it. I would met so many different of the prophets, the ascended masters, and I would have conversations with them. And then people would ask me how I knew certain things. I would never say it, but that's because I was traveling through the Merkaba. And I would go into these places and get the true information. So long story short, again, that was a long way from here. One day I pulled the 18th breath, and when I did it, I literally passed that spot in a split second. And I was like, whoa. I remember looking and disappeared and kept going. I kept going. I said, wow, this is really long. This is really far away from my body. Where am I? Mm-hmm. And I remember feeling discombobulated. And I was just like, where am I? And I slowed down and stopped. Then I remembered seeing 4 doors. And the first door I opened was this euphoric land that was so peaceful. I mean, beautiful. I can't even describe it in words, but it was just incredible, the best way I can say. So as I kept watching or kept looking in this space, then I said, well, again, no filter. So I walked through the second door. Open the second door, and the second door is pitch black. What is that? So now I go to the next door. Open the next door, and it's so bright. It's like a disc of sunlight that's coming out of there, and it's like, wow. And this was like, this is home. And I remember I was pulled into it, and I was like, I'm going home. And I remember going in, and all of a sudden something slammed the door and snatched me backwards. And I was like, what? What was that? I mean, that was the most comfortable place I'd been in. What is this? So I'm looking like, oh well. Fourth door, open the fourth door. It's pitch black. Door number 3. Let's go back there. Close door number 4, open door number 3. Ah, that's what I like right there. Stepped into the door, and something started pulling me in, and literally I felt my heart start to start slowing down and like not beating. My breath stopped, and I remember I was shutting down. I felt everything in my physical body shutting down, and I was like spiritually elevating. And I was like, oh, I'm going home. Then something pulled me out again, and it was like, you can never go in there. You can never do that. And I felt myself going down levels of different dimensions, and like resuscitating the spirit and bringing it back, and calm and nurturing it so it would heal, and just kept coming back. And for literally 7 days, it felt like, and I didn't know what happened. It felt like my physical body was here, and my energetic body was over here. So it was like literally 2 bodies walking side by side, and my spine was in excruciating pain. I mean, I couldn't get up, I could barely move. And I remember a friend of mine said, well, you look like you really in pain. He said, I got a muscle relaxant. And I was like, I don't care, I'll try anything at this point. But I don't like drugs, I don't like them. So I cut into like a quarter, and it was already a little bitty pill. I took that quarter, and it felt like somebody just took a sword and sliced my spine in half and kept slicing it. And I was like, oh Lord, what did I just do? I was like, and that's when I realized, oh my God, this is energetic. This is not physical. Because what happened was when I came back, I was kind of off. But then over the 12-hour period, I really started to feel like the bodies weren't merging. And it was like, this body had solidified in this realm, and this body solidified in this realm, and they weren't coming back. So I called a spiritual advisor I had, and I said, this is what happened. And before I could even get it out my mouth, matter of fact, Greta, and it was her friend, it was her advisor. Before Greta could even talk to her, she even told her, what did he do? She already knew I did something. And then that's when she explained to me what happened. And it was, I went to the house of God at that point, and which is, I didn't even get to the real house of God. I was at the house of Ra, which is the sun, the creation. I was at that space, so I wasn't even at the supreme space. And that's what happened to me. And so I tell people, just be careful. Then, this was years ago, and I was told, don't ever teach the Merkaba, and don't ever teach until you're ordained to teach. Of course, 100 miles an hour. I decided to start teaching. So I teach the Merkaba. I got 7 students. Take them all on a journey, and they took off like rockets, every different dimension you could think about. And I was saying, it took me about an hour and a half to chase everybody's spirit back down to bring them back into one spot. Now everybody's like, oh, what is this? I know, how's that happen? Well, when you learn how to activate the Merkaba and traveling, you'll know what I'm talking about. But it takes practice. But anyway, so I learned my lesson then, and I stopped teaching. Right then, just stopped. I just kept doing my own teaching, learning, or own education, and just learning. I stopped teaching. But there have been many different things that have happened like that. People talk about abductions. I had a business partner one year, years ago. We were driving, and we still to this day don't know what happened between 3 o'clock and 5 o'clock in the morning. We just know we were on the road, and we woke up back at the gym, and we were both on the floor asleep. We don't even know how we got there. So things happen. I mean, we're on a desolate road, and I remember kind of passing out because I was tired, and I don't know what happened with him. And all I remember is we were back at the gym, and we sit there and ask each other for years. We would ask each other, how did we get back there that night? What happened? And then we all had certain things that had happened, to us. And so we don't know. I mean, we have no clue to this day what happened. So many things can happen spiritually. Visited by extraterrestrials. There's been a ship that came over the house one time where we were literally, me and Eric was staying here with me. We both woke up at like 3 o'clock in the morning, walked right out here to the front, and we're like, well, I said, what you doing up? And he said, what you doing up? I said, I don't know. Something told me to get up and come outside. We get up, go outside, literally right above us. There's a perfect 360-degree circle, about probably 500 meters up in the sky. Around it, you can see a cloud cover. So literally, you see clouds, like a cloudy night. The clouds are moving this way, 360-degree circle, wide open. You can literally see through this 360-degree circle, you can see stars, all kind of like constellations, everything. And we were just sitting there looking at it, tried to take pictures of it. Nothing was there. Everything we had done never came out. So it's just understanding there are beings that are here when you start tapping into the spiritual realm that will visit you. Not all of them are good. Some of them, most of them usually are, depends on where your heart is. But I did learn that in this journey to stay in a space of loving and kindness, and you will stay safe all the time. Now we're in the light time. 2012, we switched over into light. So in light, we're able to now navigate and go through these different places with ease. We're not always challenged, and we're not always tried to be assumed by some kind of dark energy, because we can see it coming. And so we know how to get out of the way. So that's a good thing about now. Back when I first started doing this, we had to learn navigation because there was no light and we were just going through darkness. But that's a good thing about 2012, we switched over. And now since then, we switched over from the Piscean period to the Aquarian period, which actually gives us even more abilities to do things because we awakened the fifth dimensional body within ourselves, which is something that I was traveling through for years, but have now learned to teach other people to do it. But I traveled through it for years, but still perfecting it to this day, because every time you go into something different. Then I spent some time in Peru, and that's when I really got answers to who I was and what my purpose was. And so everybody is led to do different things and go different places. There are many paths to the Most High, and everybody's path is going to be a little bit different. It's just best to find a community that you're comfortable with and keep free of judgment, and just allow and respect everybody's journey. And when we do that, we're able to move into better spaces and more positive spaces that allow us to actually open up and to become our best and our higher self. But until we understand that, it's very difficult. So now I'm just in a space where I was told I could start teaching, and I think 50 years or 49 I could start teaching. And that's when I started teaching basic stuff. And now it's getting a little bit more, and helping people to understand themselves. And that's kind of where I am. And then this is many stories I could tell you about different phenomenons that I've experienced, and different knowings that I've come into. The 7 Hermetic Principles are something that I learned, and that helped me to really understand everything. The 7 Hermetic Principles are great if you understand some type of a system, because the system that you understand is going to be explained by the 7 Hermetic Principles. If the 7 Hermetic Principles is the first thing you're learning, it may be a little bit harder to understand because you don't have anything to apply it to. But it's not necessarily like the starter book. Definitely, it's not a starter book. It's a book that kind of teaches you how to understand everything that's going on around you. And then we understand that our minds are very powerful. And when I say mind, I'm not just speaking about the brain, I'm speaking about the heart as well. So the heart is the most powerful organ in our body because it created everything else. So once we understand how to work through the heart, then we can do many different things. But I want to go ahead and open up the floor for questions. I mean, I do have other stories if you want to hear about certain things and different travels of how I got certain answers and where I'm going, all that good stuff. I'm wide open to it. Just again, I just wanted to share how I got to this point through many different trials. Meditation was my opening door. Meditation taught me how to really go into further realms. So for me to teach people how to meditate and teach people how to tap into their highest self is the best way. And you can lead to anything that you want to lead to. It's just understanding you have to have the mentality in the mind. Now, we do have a lot of programs that have been set or instilled in us through either society or through our DNA or through whatever. And these programs sometimes limit our ability to think and to see where we can actually go with this. But it actually goes a lot further. But it's for me, it's a fun journey. Like I said before, that first level of consciousness, when you first start waking up, that is where you start getting all these clairs, these different abilities, and people think this is it. Oh, I'm here. But no, that's just level one. That's just the first thing. That's showing you that you're tapped into what we call the unity consciousness. So now when you tap into the unity consciousness, you can get messages. So people that do readings, people that do all this kind of stuff, whether they psychics or whatever, all they're doing is tapping into the universal energy. All of us are connected, no matter where we are in this world or in this solar system. We're all connected some kind of way. So if we understand how to go into that meditative state to find that connection, then we can get a lot of answers, And it's, sometimes you talk about hypnosis. Hypnosis, we're able to go into past lives and we can see certain things. Some people believe in it, some people don't believe in it. I'm just like, hey, everybody has their choice of what they want to believe. Everybody has it. I know what I've experienced. I know what other people have experienced. And I know what some people haven't experienced. And those people that haven't experienced it, of course, they're not going to have certain belief systems that you might have because you experienced it, So we just have to respect all of it because everybody's journey is unique and there's not one light code and there's not one set pattern or formula for everybody to get to their highest self. Now there are, like the 7 Hermetic principles gives you an idea to open up more things. The formulas that I have help you to tap into yourself, but they're very different. Something I learned from fitness that I'm learning here is with fitness, to make somebody the best they can absolutely be, you can't put them in a cookie cutter routine. It has to be designed for them all the way around, mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. Because all those things have a lot to do with how successful you can be. Same thing when you come into the spiritual realm. You have to design a program that's going to be specifically for a person. And you can have a specific way that you're going to use it, a formula, but how you apply that formula is going to be different and unique for every soul. Because everybody's code is completely different. There's not one code that's the same across the board. So we have to understand and respect that uniqueness. But it's learning ourselves first. And that's where I first went into. Literally it was, 10 years unknowing and probably another 5 to 6 years knowing. It was all about learning who I am. And guess what? I'm still learning who I am. Yeah? Because every day we evolve and we come into something new and something that's different and beautiful about ourselves that we didn't know. When I tell people about the drum circles, which are incredible, we do them every third Friday. So if anybody wants to come and join them, please do. Drumming is something I never did. I always liked it as a kid, but never did it. I didn't start drumming until about 6 months ago. Now I'm playing 3 at the same time, sometimes 4. And actually I'm learning other instruments to play with it. So you can learn to do what you want to do. And you'll be surprised what you can activate inside yourself if you just let go. You just have to let go and look at your greatness and stop looking at your faults or what you can't do. We always say what we can't do. We're quick to do that. But sometimes it's like, what do we want to do? And when you really want to do something, trust me, mentally, you're going to create that situation and you're going to create it. That goes into what I love to talk about, mental gender, the I and the me. That is how we manifest. And that is the 7th principle of the Hermetic principles, gender. And it's mental gender, the mind. Because everything about that book is transmuting things alchemically, mentally, not necessarily physically. Because mentally, we're on a higher plane anyway. So, all right. Now let's open the floor. I see someone asked me a question earlier. When did your journey begin? I would say probably when I was born. I just didn't realize it. I was called to do certain things, and I was always a little different than everybody. And that's a way that you can tell. And I never was one to conform and follow the rules or follow everybody. I kind of didn't. I like to be in front. I never liked stepping behind, or I wanted to be by myself. Wanted to. Was it fearful? No, it wasn't. I wasn't afraid. Some kind of way I knew that I was always protected. Even when I went into that house that time, that third door, I knew, and I was home. I was just like, I'm with the Father. I'm good. you know. But it was like, no, you got things you got to finish. So get on back down there and go do what you got to do. What led me to the Orient? You know, spirit. I mean, when you say the Orient, that's kind of like I've learned many different modalities and learned from many different spiritual teachers. In the spirit world, they don't know the difference between nationalities or places. It's just a spirit, you know. So I've studied under African systems, Egyptian systems, Orient systems, Hebrew systems, and what else? And Native American systems. So, but when you tap into spirit, you don't know that. You know, you just might learn it later on because with your journal, like, oh, the Native Americans did that. Oh, the Africans did that. So, and how long so far? I'm still learning. So, I think it's life going. I think once I complete the process of ascension, I do know now that I have a choice. Once I actually fully ascend, then I can stay here and help, or I can go. So it's a choice now. We do have a choice, whereas before we didn't. The spiritual body can do amazing things if you activate it, and there's many different ways to activate it. And there's how-tos again, but when you go to the how-tos, they're kind of cookie cutter. You just have to, like I was saying earlier, you know, I was doing these things in the third dimension, looking for them in the third dimension, but they were coming from the fifth dimension. So the same thing. It don't work that way. It's like you can start to tap in, but when you get the energy, follow it. And because it might tell you to skip steps 4 through 6, 4 through 7. And it might say you need to go here. And so you just need to follow. And then it might show you a whole other blueprint of what you need to do. But it's the purpose of, I want to say this, the purpose of the formulas or the things that people are putting out there, they're great. And they are step-by-step ways, how-tos. However, if you have the intention to do it, as soon as you step on that how-to, whatever you're called to, you're going to step into that system. You might complete the system, or you might get to step 2, and all of a sudden you're moving into a whole other system. Just follow it. But you have to be in tune, because otherwise, you know, the ego can get involved, and that thing will take you all over the place. You got to be aware. All right. Questions? I think I answered that question. Anybody else got any questions? Comments? One of the things you want to share?
There's definitely something I want to say. You said something that kind of stuck out to me. You were saying just let go. Just let go. I feel like I'm at a point in my journey where I'm literally there, where like the old me is literally holding me.
Right, oh yeah.
And I'm like, why? I literally wrote, I'm like, why am I resisting? Like, what is this? Like, what gave you that push to just say yes completely? Because there's there's an amount of not necessarily not fear, but it's like fear of who I truly am.
Right.
You know?
It's stepping into your power.
I don't know.
Right. Well, that's a good question. Now, what happened to me, I hope nothing happened to anybody else in this room or anybody else, period. I lost everything. So, I don't want that for anybody. So, let's work on how you can just let go. Because it's like, I was there, but I just was hard-headed. And I was just like, you know, because that ego, the way to let go is this. Understand your ego always wants to be in a space of control, and it wants to survive. When you start going into your higher self and into your spiritual self, you no longer need to survive anymore, because you're thriving. You're literally moving forward. It's like if you're in the water in a boat, you're driving a boat and you're going across the ocean. But the ego wants you to be slapping the water, drowning, and grabbing for that life preserver. That's the ego's job, to make you grab that life preserver. So I would say the best thing to do to let go is understand with the ego that the ego wants control. Give it control to take you to the next level. So it's kind of like tricking it, because the ego just wants certain control. So you task it. You give it something to do. Okay, so I want to meditate. I want to go into this space. So when you go into this space is going to actually not, you're going to save me from going too far from another or into another space. So you let the ego push you into that space, and then not let you go to the next space, and then stop it, and then get used to that space. And when you get used to that space, let the ego push you to the next space, but don't let you go any further. So now the ego starts to figure like, oh, well, I'm good But then it's like the ego sees even more power from those other places. So you tell the ego to go watch, and it sees this power. So let the ego do it, and then you just let the ego go do that thing, and you go do your own thing. So it's kind of just like tricking it.
Yeah.
But letting go is hard sometimes. The 7 Hermetic principles, letting go is holding, the opposite of holding on. So let's say if you want to let go, but you're holding on. So what you have to do is polarize holding on to just seeing yourself free, and notice this is the same exact opposite, but a different frequency of vibration.
Yeah, okay. It's almost as if Spirit is being patient with me.
Oh yeah.
And also teaching me to be patient with myself and my journey.
Yeah. But
I also hear like the veil is thin. You can't stay in this space.
Right. Yeah.
Because you're conscious.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what happens is you're used to surviving a certain way.
Yes.
To let go, try something different. That's it. Because Spirit is being patient with you and showing you that you can be successful in all these other things that you're doing a different way. But you're used to like this old way. For me, like doing business. I was used to doing business openly and honestly, but I was too trusting. So I would never ask for my money. Okay, so I had to do something different. So it's just something as simple as that. Okay, be open, trusting, but still take care of yourself. Because set boundaries and start with that self-love. Because if you don't love yourself enough, you're going to give your whole life away. And you keep giving your life away. And then the ego got to keep saving you. And that's how the ego is empowered. So stop giving your life away. Make sense? Am I touching on something that you're dealing with?
Yes.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah, go ahead, Anja.
Yeah, what was interesting for me, I'm a little older, and just, since you're talking about it now, is the ego. It took me a long time to figure out what is ego, because, for a long time I was just like, well, me is me. What is there? What is ego? And, just to make that, I know now, but, just to explain what ego is, that this is a part of you that can be separated from your spiritual part. And just to get that determination, that was a big breakthrough for me, because at first it was just ego is me. So I couldn't quite understand that ego wants one thing, but you should do another thing. So that was a, like I said, a big thing for me about the ego. And you talk about the ego that now I can understand it.
Yeah, and the ego is going to be part of us. It's part of it. We can't get rid of it. If you really think about it,
but separating it from, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because ego, it's just like it's me. It's like one.
Right.
So
yeah.
But you can actually, your ego is can be separated, because it tries to tell you things.
Right. Definitely.
Certain sometimes should not do.
Right. Exactly. Oh yeah. You're right. Definitely. It's part of us, but we can actually take control of it, and that's
exactly. But first, we got to figure out what ego is.
Right, exactly. Because
you see what I mean?
Yeah,
and that was the biggest breakthrough for me to understand what is ego.
Right. Yeah, and everybody's ego is different.
Right.
It lives in a different space, and that's part of the self mastery that goes into all the shadow work, all the chakra balancing, all the stuff chakra learning that we learn, because it takes into ego, and ego is responsible for a lot of our negative emotions. Very much so.
What is shadow work?
Shadow work?
Thank you.
Shadow work is when we go into ourselves and find the darkest parts of us that are hiding our true expression. So shadow work is like, okay, what am I doing to be accepted by my peers, my mom, my dad, my family? What am I doing that I don't want to do? But shadow work is going to find those things that you've done since you were yay big to be accepted. And it gets real painful. I do a whole system on that, and we have a workshop. Probably gonna start doing that workshop every 3 or 4 weeks to let people just come in, and I'll just take you through. It takes about 3 hours, but I have a program called Shift. It's called Shadows Hiding in Fear and Trauma. And so we remove them. We go in and we get them. And it's emotional, and it's sometimes a little painful during the workshop, but it's good. Some people just don't want to open up in public, but you got to realize that everybody is there in doing the same thing. Yeah. So that's what shadow work is. That's the long of the short of it, definitely. And I'm gonna actually be doing a retreat probably the first week of November, and I'll do like a 3-day retreat. I'm trying to get it all hashed out now, and I'll go in and I'll be doing a lot of that shadow work, removing. It's going to be a weekend of healing and releasing. But yeah. But anyway, Barbara, you got your question. I see your question here. That's real funny.
Well, you answered all of those.
Except one of them.
You read them.
You asked about demonic encounters.
Yeah, that came later. But I have one question about the ego.
Sure.
I always knew what it was. It's just the battle trying to control it. So let's say I'm in. You said to go ahead and task it.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm in meditation and I start to zone out, when I hear your voice, I automatically snap back and trying to visualize whatever it is you're saying. And I go, okay, I'm going to release it again. I'm going to release.
Right.
I'm just going to release.
That's the ego.
Go.
That's definitely the ego.
And then, you know, that monkey brain comes back, chatter, chatter, chatter. So you're saying to task it, and I should task it even before I begin. Is that correct?
Well, you can, but in meditation, it's a little bit different because you don't want to mess with the ego in meditation. What you want to do is let the ego do whatever it wants to do in meditation. That allows it to task itself because it'll get out your way. Because the only way the ego stays in your way is when you consciously give it attention. So if you're constantly trying to tell it to do something, it's happy because guess what? When you're telling it to do something consciously, you're not going into the unconscious.
Yeah, mine is pretty stubborn. Damn.
Oh, well, that's
Okay.
and that happens. So we got an easy way to do that. So anytime something comes in and starts making you think, ask for more. That's how you task it in the meditation. Give me more information. Give me more. And just start focusing on whatever it wants you to focus on. And then it stops. It literally will stop.
Okay.
But yeah. But as far as have I had demonic encounters, a lot of times. That's one of the things that the first 6 months I worked with the entity or the deity Ra. And Ra is the one that fights against demonic spirits. So yes, I've encountered many demonic spirits and taken them out of people's bodies. That is a very interesting thing, and you better be very careful with it because they are very dangerous, depending on the level of the demon. The biggest one and the worst one I've dealt with is Baal, B-A-A-L.
I remember you saying that.
Yeah, that's nothing. That means it's like a demon does not know love, and it's you can't use your human love. You have to use the love of God, and you have to be strong and steadfast and do whatever it takes to get rid of it. But it's not fun. I can tell you that now. But I've dealt with him one time, and I've dealt with several other ones that are very nasty. But you have to get the demon's name. Once you get the demon's name, you can get it out of somebody. Until then, you're just putting Band-Aids on them.
So let me ask you, do they come if you summon them or if you're just on your journey?
Well, the sky's the limit on that question. To answer that, there is no specific way that they're going to come in. I can say this: when and now we're in a time of light, so it's not as bad. Before 2012, they were really bad. They come through your weaknesses. The cracks in your foundation are where they will seep in. Your fears and your insecurities, they will exploit. So if you ever start feeling those being exploited, then you have a lower energy. Now that doesn't mean it's a demon. That means it's a lower energy, but that can lead to a demonic entity. Demonic entities.
Affirmations, do they help in your weakened areas?
Affirmations do help. But if you get attached, you need to call somebody that deals with that.
I don't plan to. I was just asking.
yeah. I'm just saying is if they attach to you, then don't even try to deal with it. Call somebody, and that's just my professional advice to you. Don't deal with it because some people try to and they'll twist you up. You think the ego got some power, man? Them things they're bad, especially if you get a bad one. I pulled them off of people that have literally been attached for 20 years sometimes. And when they come out of it, they're completely different people. And they have to relearn themselves. Yeah. But they're there, but I don't deal with it. I don't even like to give the subject a lot of attention. I'm just like, if something happens, then call me. and or I can give you a number to call and we can deal with it then. I just don't even give the conversation to the lower energies.
Okay, gotcha.
Because you mess around and keep talking about something and draw something into you, or draw some energy around you. So forget that. Keep thinking light. The more you think light, that is the best protection. You know, people talk about protection. The best protection is to create a stronger light around you, to become and walk in that light. And if you walk in that light of the righteousness in the Most High, then things aren't going to deal with you. Remember, higher planes always dominate lower planes. Demonic entities are on lower planes. Okay? So you got to raise up.
As she was saying that in my mind, I was hearing you gotta hold the light.
Yeah. You got to hold the light. Yeah, you can't be playing with the light. You know, them people telling they walking in the light and they not. That gets you in trouble. Yeah, holding the light. That means you holding the light. You holding it down. You doing it. You walking in it. You know, you got to do it. You know, you can tell people, and I mean, even in this business, you can tell people who holding the light, and you can tell people that's not. You can tell people that's doing it for the money, and you can tell people that's really holding the light, and they have a calling for it. You know, this is just unfortunate. This has become a business, a big business. You know, so just always keep your eyes open. As long as you stay in the light, you'll attract the light. You know, as long as you do. Let's see if I had any other questions on here.
I have a comment and a question.
Sure thing.
My comment is, I thank you for sharing your story tonight. It's been an interesting day for me today. This is the second time today that someone has shared with me a part of their story and its journey.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me to a place of my story.
Oh, okay.
And I've always been like different.
Well, that's all right.
which I've always embraced.
Mm-hmm.
I was never, embarrassed or anything by it.
Mm-hmm.
I liked being different.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But then I had some spiritual things that happened to me, and as you were telling your story, my mind went back to every single one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And so, again, I appreciate that this time that you're allowing. Because there's
definitely.
so much going on with me personally right
Right.
now. I'm sure that everybody in the room would
Mhm.
probably, agree with that to some.
Yeah, oh, yeah. That full moon brought a lot.
Yeah.
Brought a lot up. That full moon did, definitely.
So, I have never, until I came here,
Mm-hmm.
I had never actually meditated.
Okay.
I prayed, that kind of thing, but I
Mhm.
never really meditated.
Right.
You were very specific about when you started meditating.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to know what happened that led you to that.
I started seeing the numbers, and it was like strong bloodline of energetic people, and I was just being called. Everybody's calling is different. This is the thing. What made me start meditating was I woke up to the calling, because I was put here a long time ago. Been here many times. This lifetime, let's talk about. I was told to do certain things. I was hard-headed. I was given a lot of physical gifts, and I was trying to exploit those in the wrong mindset, so those were taken from me. So I was shown that I had extraordinary abilities physically, spiritually, and mentally. I only tapped into the physical, not realizing everything went together. I was called to teach, not preach. I was called to teach my story to help other people find their own paths to enlighten themselves. So I bring light to people, or I basically bring them to their light. That's my job. That's what made me start meditating. I was probably 32, 33 years old, and I guess God, the Most High, was like, you got to get to work. You changing all these people's bodies, and one of the main things was I was changing bodies so fast, but the mentality was monsters, because they were getting these beautiful bodies and they were egotistical and it was just ugly. So it's like, there's more to this. And then when I said there's more to this, something just made me start seeing numbers, and then to get me to understand numbers more, I started meditating. So God has his own way in his path of sliding you into your light, especially now because we're in a time where we need people to awaken to get on their path, not necessarily to save other people, but to save themselves and to live the life of righteousness and live in these core values that need to be understood and shown to people, because we've gotten so far away from them because everybody's trying to, I got to get mine, I got to do this, I got to, this materialistic world. But all that's breaking down. But now it's kind of like everybody's running to that while it's breaking down. And what's happening is the people that's running away from it, going to the spiritual life, they're the ones that are starting to get the material gains. Yeah, that's what's happening. Because they're doing it for the righteous reasons and not to belittle or hurt someone else versus someone else is just trying to take over. All that stuff is starting to crumble. That old energy is breaking down from 2012. It's taken a while, but it was 10,000 years. So shoot, what's it, 21 to 9 years later, after it switched, it's still breaking down. It's still breaking down.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Quick question about meditation. So I'm kind of adamant about not being mainstream woke.
Yeah.
So I've explored different ways of meditation. I found out so many ways. You don't just have to sit there. You can even paint. Like I love painting and meditating. What do you have to say about that? Like the different avenues to paint, to meditation.
To meditation.
Yeah, it's like because I meet some people and they're like, "How do you meditate?" And I'm like, there's really no rules. Like you just have to let your body tell you what to do.
Right. Yeah.
Meditating could be listening to the same song over and over again until you tap into the words. And
right. Exactly.
So
it's. So you're actually right, because that is something that is very key that people have to understand about meditation. When people come here and meditate, the first thing I do is tell you, get into a comfortable position. Period. Whatever's comfortable to you. Breathe and just relax. Allow yourself to just flow. That's it. So meditation has many different avenues. There are like thousands of different ways to meditate, and some are very difficult. And those ones that are very difficult, people hang their hat on them because they're so difficult, which is now identity, which goes into ego, which defeats the purpose of meditation. So you got to see how the masters aren't doing it. It's the people that have lost sight of the mastery. So how can you meditate? It's whatever's best for you. What I like to say is this. Once you learn to meditate, whether it's painting or if it's fitness, I used to get into, you ever heard of runner's high? People get into that's a meditative state. What's happening? You're altering your state of consciousness. That's all meditation is. Altering the state of consciousness. No matter what you do, it's altering the state of consciousness. Once you alter that state of consciousness, no matter what it is, you could be so engrossed in doing whatever work you're doing, you could literally start getting messages and downloads. It's happened to people a lot of times. You can be reading a book. I can be reading a book and get so far into it, and all of a sudden I'm reading the book, but I'm just like, I'm seeing this whole other thing, and I'm like, how am I doing this? I'm reading, but I'm seeing. And so it's something totally different. The whole thing with meditation is allowing yourself to get into an altered state of consciousness, doing it whatever way is best for you. And that's at the end of the day. Is there a right and wrong way to meditate? The only wrong way to do it is not allow. Yeah. And this is the thing. Meditation is beautiful when you're in it, right? You know what the goal is? To walk in meditation 24/7. That is becoming a fifth dimensional being. That means when you paint, you feel that euphoric feeling. You want to be able to maintain that all day long. And watch how your life changes. I did that for 3.5 years. Never had a bad day. When I meditated so much. I got so used to being in that state, I didn't know how to come out of it. And that's when I was always in the cloud. So that's the key. To become or to live in a state of meditation, which is the truest reality. And then what happens, you vibrate at that frequency and everything around you begins to shift. And that's what's happening. The more that we get in the same energy of that good vibration, you start to shift. This house probably got 10 miles of good vibration. As soon as you come through it, something's going to shift in somebody. Something. Always. People used to tell me they turned the corner up at the street and they could feel the energy before meditations because we prepped the room and brought so much stuff in. If you go to some of my social media, you'll see like when I'm doing clearings, we did a clearing, New Year's Eve meditation. I did a clearing on 22 people, physically. Cleared 22 people in about 2 hours. One-on-ones, 22 clearings. When I tell you we put that film on to record that meditation, there were so many orbs of light and spirits in here. It was ridiculous. Like literally, like it was a blizzard snowing with lights. But it's on my social media page. So yeah, go check it out. You'll see it. And then you'll see another light when I'm speaking Hebrew and calling in energies of God. And you'll see a big orb come over. And if you keep watching, it's a flash of light. It's right there. And a being sat right there. But all these are benevolent beings that I call. So I don't deal with the darkness. That's a no-no for me. My spirit, and then some people can. I can't. Some people like, another way, I was ordained to do this. And that by God. So I didn't have any physical human teachers until much later. And now they kind of just guide me on my path and kind of just say, go that way. You know, stay in the lane. Or if I got a question, I just ask somebody who's more experienced. So that's what really pulled me into it was, and God said, it's time for you to work. Get off your butt, stop playing, and do what you're supposed to do. Now, I had a question on here. How do you find a spiritual teacher to show you how to get on your own spiritual path? That is a great question. Again, everybody's code is unique. So the way you find a spiritual teacher is take time and meditate. Start knowing who you are and start clearing out that baggage. And the more that you clear that baggage out, the more your light will shine. And when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Okay? So that's the easiest and the best way to do it. You know, and then what you have to do is continue being that person, and you're going to align to the energy. Now, this is the beautiful thing and the key thing about this. That might not be your teacher forever. I had 5 deities teach me. They would pass me. I was like, oh, you mean you got a relationship. Bloop, and I'm shifted off to the next one. Don't get used to me. You got to go over here and learn this. And go learn this and go learn this. And now deities, when we talk about those, all the deities are different energies that have the human characteristics. And the human being actually has all these characteristics. When we work with a certain deity, all they do is awaken that characteristic within us. So when you work with all of them, we're now becoming a mega god, goddess, or whatever, not God at all, but a human being that now is actually embodying the ability to actually do the things that 26 netters have done. And so that's all it is. That's all the initiations are. But when you initiate, or teachers are, let's say, let me back up. That's all it is when you're learning from all these different entities or these deities, spirits, angels, archangels. You're embodying their personal characteristics because each one of them have a specific job. What you're doing is becoming the super being because you're now activating not just their job, but another's job and another job and another's job and another job. And you complete yourself. And once you complete yourself, then you start to enlighten the way you need to do, and it goes into another frequency, even higher. Your vibration shifts and you become your own. And once you become your own, and this is something that happened to me in Peru, when I was studying there and going through many different plant medicines, I remember seeing the netters and asking, egotistically, am I going to be like you guys? Am I going to do this because you want power? It's a human being. It's a natural thing. They said, no, you'll never be us. And I was like, lip stuck out. They said, you'll be something, you'll be your own. And I was like, huh? I never understood that until about 3-4 years ago. And then I started coming into my own because I started initiating to so many different energies. And I started to become a multiplicity of those different energies that made me become who I am now and still growing into more. So the best way to find a teacher is clear your baggage, let your own light shine, keep working on yourself, start loving yourself to the point where nothing outside of you bothers you anymore. Then once you get to that phase, that light starts to really shine and you're ready and you're seeking for help. And it may not be a human being that comes into your space. You may pray and something may come to you and start just teaching you. Now, a lot of people are fearful of that because they say, it could be dark spirits and dark entities. If you're working purely in the light, it's not going to be coming from the darkness because your vibration is too high. If you have those cracks and you bull jabbing, then you're going to bring it in. Right. I'm trying not to be, I got new people around. But no. So
So,
Go
on
ahead.
that note, can we talk about ancestors?
mhm.
When you talked earlier about when you went into meditation at one point, you had ancestors that came and talked to you, sit down and talk to you about things.
Mhm.
I'm just interested in that. So, can you expound on that?
Yeah. With me, ancestors, it was a little different because I wasn't big into understanding ancestors. So a lot of times they would just come to me and I would just get information and I didn't know who they were coming from. And then let's say I might go to a reader and somebody say, hey, you know, your great great grandmother is around you all the time. I'm like, oh, who is that? So I went and asked my mom about it and I found out some certain things. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. And this person did this and this is what's coming to me. But I always had this energy around me that was protecting me. There was a female great great grandmother. And I just started to then show love to that person or to that energy, to that ancestor. But if you want to tap into your ancestors, I would just openly, instead of looking for a specific one, because a lot of times we say, well, the grandma or the grandpa or uncle or aunt, this is the one that was powerful. Let me tap into that energy. Well, that's true. They were powerful here, but there might be one that was way more powerful in the spirit realm. And so you want to attach to someone who is going to align to you. So it's just call upon your aunts and your ancestors and show them love. Just really just give them offerings of love. Now, I'm not into sacrifices and cutting blood and all that stuff. I don't do it. I don't do that. Now, some people do it. That's up to them. I mean, I have no problem with you doing it. I'm not going to do it.
Right.
Because I understand the spilling of blood does something different.
So don't bring
Yeah.
no chicken backs and chicken.
No, don't bring no don't bring no goats to me. I'm not, that's not gonna happen. But you know, you might need, if you need to go out to the barn back there, take care. You do what you gotta do. I don't want no parts of it. But no, I mean seriously, some people that's what they do. That's what they practice. My ancestry didn't tell me to practice that. They said, "Don't touch that blood. Don't do it. Don't touch another life. Don't do it. Don't take any life." Is what I was told. And that doesn't make people bad to do it. It's just they're on a different path, you know, and they might need to sacrifice. You know, for me, I was taught that sacrifice your lowest values, your lowest characteristics, and that's more than any kind of blood sacrifice that you can ever give up. Sacrifice your lower characteristics. Sacrifice that. Because it's easy to cut an animal, and they didn't sacrifice their life for you. But how about you give something up that you need to give up for yourself?
That's the real work.
Yeah, that's the work. And that's when you bring it in.
Shadow work.
Yeah, that's the shadow work.
That's it.
That's benevolent beings coming in. That's it. It's not people hide behind that. Whoosh. Cut the throat and keep living. Okay, now we can do this. Now, but you ain't paid your homage. Someone else did it for you. And trust me, now you owe that. So let's get it twisted. Remember, cause and effect. Everything has a lineage and link to it. So be careful what you link yourself to.
Shadow work, just by you explaining, I know it can work in all different areas. Especially when people are dealing with severe financial issues. Like they just cannot get ahead. Just don't see it.
Right.
So how do you, is that the type of work you go and do, the shadow or?
Shadow work would be good with that, but that is going to be more reprogramming.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's reprogramming. So that would be spiritual clearing. I would say first hypnosis.
Okay.
Hypnosis. To take somebody into a trance to go in and find a lesson behind why they're doing something. First you have a conversation. And you can, just how we had a conversation today, and when we open that crown, all of a sudden, the whys came out.
Yeah.
That's all you do. You had that conversation, the whys come out, and you say, oh man, with me, I had a grandfather that was attached to me that didn't believe in working for money and giving everything away free. As soon as I released that energy for me, then I started making money. But everybody has something different, you know? But the first thing is really just opening the chakra system and just allowing yourself to experience the understanding of the why, and just allowing yourself to go through the experience of the cause and effect. And just think about your life. Let's go back into details, because the ego and the conscious mind loves to have tangible reasons. So let's give it a tangible reason. Let's have a conversation, because that starts to break the ice. Then we go into hypnosis and we just kind of remove the ice and put a new Ice Cube in there, with a new program. And it works. It works. The deeper the induction, as long as you're at level 4 induction, you will make changes within 1 to 4 times of hypnosis. You will make a change 1 to 4 times. If you're at level 2 or 3, it might take you about 10 times, but you'll still get it done.
Well, everything sits in my chair.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I hear all,
Yeah.
whether I'm sensing it or they're telling me, and so it's like how to direct them. Mostly right now, I'm telling people just call you and have a conversation.
Right.
And you can direct
Right.
them as to what they need to.
And a lot of times too, with me in coaching is, a lot of times people aren't ready to hear the spiritual side, but they can understand the unconscious and conscious mind side. And I'm willing to work with people wherever they need to be worked with. Like, I'm not going to push my agenda on you. It's like, wherever you are, let me get you to this. And then if you ask me questions about spirituality and what I do extra, then I'll explain it. But I'm not going to use spiritual work to transform somebody without their permission. But if you tell me I can use conscious and unconscious work, I will. So.
When you say conscious and unconscious work, and then you say spiritual work, going back to what you said about, financial issues and things like that, consciously, I've done work and I've figured out that a lot of my financial issues really comes from like a deep-rooted feeling of unworthiness and lack mentality.
Right.
But I don't understand necessarily the spiritual side of where this is coming from, but consciously I do know. Is that like, I don't even know what I'm asking, like, is that a...
No, it makes sense, perfect sense. So let's break this down to the conscious, and let's go beyond the conscious, and then go into the unconscious, and let's take it beyond the unconscious and go into the spirit. Okay, so let's talk about the consciousness. The consciousness is when you're actually operating. So the consciousness says, okay, let's not make money. And so you do things to sabotage. Self-sabotage, you don't even realize. And I'm just going to say self-sabotage. So I'm going to just commit on that. Okay, but it can be self-sabotage in trickles, or it could be a brick, or whatever it is. When you're looking at the conscious mind is being directed by the unconscious mind. So your conscious mind, you can think about self-worth. You got, okay, now understand self-worth. Self-worth is my issue. So I need to fix the self-worth. Well, the only way you can fix the self-worth is to go into the unconscious. So the unconscious mind is where you've had conscious learnings that tell the unconscious to say you're not valued, or you shouldn't value yourself, or don't value yourself because you're not worthy. And then you start to have the lack mentality because you don't feel you're worthy. Could have been something that happened to you as a child. Could have happened to you while you were in the womb. And see, if it happened to you while you're in the womb, you're still remembering all this stuff. It could have happened while you were being conceived by your parents. It could have been going out into spirit. It could have been actually unconscious, because the unconscious is also passed down through the DNA, just like eye color, hair color, skin color, texture, everything. The mentality and thought process is also passed down in DNA. So all this stuff goes into, that's unconscious that you don't even know about. So the unconscious is stuff that's governing you to consciously be in this situation, or put yourself in the situation that you're currently in. So that's the conscious, is what is actually being directed. The conscious is the reality of the situation. You're consciously seeing it, consciously understanding there's lack and there's self-worth problems, where the self-worth came from something that happened consciously that told your unconscious to hide and to not be worthy. Now, something could have been where it's like, I don't need to be worthy, so I can hide and not be hurt. So you don't know where this has come from. This is in the unconscious. So these are different things we, through hypnosis, we can dig into and actually go into negative emotions and find that if we want to. And so that's the unconscious. Now, the unconscious deals with straight giving the conscious what to do. Now, when you start looking beyond the unconscious and you start looking into the spirit, that is what is completely unknown. Is it DNA? Is it now an attachment of somebody else's energy that's attached to you? So now it becomes all energetic when we talk about spirit. The spirit is the part that you can't see, feel, touch, or hear. So that's the invisible. And that's the unknown. Well, the conscious is the unknown, but it's linked to us some kind of way. Whether it be DNA, whether it be early childhood, birth, womb, whatever. So that's kind of the difference. So once you break down the understanding of lack in an unconscious sense, and you heal the unconscious, but if it keeps coming back, then that means there's something else attached, maybe in your auric field, your energy systems. Now the chakras create the auric field. The chakras have meridians between each chakra. The meridians cross each other, creates a vortex of spinning energy, which is the chakra. There's 7 main chakras in your body, actually now 12, but there are 112 actual physical chakras in the third dimension in your body. So if one of those chakras is off alignment, what's going to happen is it's going to create a different color in your auric field. And you can actually, if someone is good, they can spot the auric field or spot the dysfunction in the auric field, find the chakra that's out and realign that. That goes into energetic, spiritual stuff to help people to understand what chakras operate what things. Remember, we were talking about the crown and the third eye, and Vicky got a full lesson on the crown and the third eye chakra today, where she got a full understanding of what each one of those chakras operate, and that could be one of the reasons for lack. The crown chakra could be shut down. It could not, and you could be opening other things like playing sound bowls, clearing your energy. If you're playing the same sound bowl, you might be opening one chakra, but the other chakras aren't opening. So now you got, well, let's say 6 major chakras that aren't operating correctly, and you got one chakra that's wide open. Like a lot of people want to do the manifestation chakra, so they go tapping into that sacral, that creation. And the sacral gets to blowing so much and blowing out so much energy, but it can't go through the root chakra to ground or to create the reality. And the upper chakra's online. Right, it's got to flow. So you open the crown chakra wide first. And the crown chakra is the one that's going to set the precedence for each of the others. But then you also have to open the root chakra, because the root chakra is the one that's going to set the foundation for the other chakras. So you can't just, and so I tell people, don't just mess with one. You got to clear them all. Yeah. So any energy work I do, the first thing I'm going to do to you is clear your chakras. That's it.
Can they all be open simultaneously?
Oh, yeah. 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 They can be. Very rare that ever happens, but they can. Yeah. You can. Definitely. And then what happens is chakra energy, because it's like blood flow, energy flow, it changes every second. So you might have all 10 open. I have a aura scan or chakra scan that shows you, and sometimes you'll keep 10 of them, like all of them will be on 10, and then sometimes you have them different. I got to the point at one time I used to take myself and I was always at 10 on each one of them. But that was just a lot of spiritual work, inner work, to keep myself in that space.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Does your auric field change? Because I had an experience. I do Reiki, and I was getting a Reiki treatment, and the lady who gave me the treatment, she was like, "Wow, you have a golden aura." So, you know, and I saw it too, so I know, you know. But the next time, it was different. It was like indigo. It wasn't, you know, it wasn't the same. Thing.
Every second of the day. When I teach auras, I put people against that wall, because that wall is excellent to see auras, and I make everybody in the class read auras. And then I play around with them. I say, watch this. And I'll put an aura and I shift my color. And I keep shifting, and I tell each person, what color is it? What's happening? Then I might even show exactly my true form. And then I close it back down. But that's all understanding how to control. You're in control of everything. You just have to learn how to control it. It's fun to do it, because people are, hey, what did you do? You just did something different. And it's just, you know, but I like to play around, because I want to see if people can actually see it. Because I'm teaching you how to see it, just watch it. And auras are very easy to read. Yeah, they're very easy to read.
Go deeper on my learning.
Yeah, definitely. I love teaching people these things. It's simple. I make things simple and not hard, because you can make this a doctoral program if you want to, and go way out. But it's like, let me just common sense it and like break it down for you. Those 7 Hermetic principles are not something that's easy to learn. They're very tricky, because if you learn them, you can manipulate anything. Anything. I was taught how to manipulate energy by a lady years ago, and I didn't really believe it until it happened. And I was like, okay. me not do that again. But yeah, it happens. There's so many different ways to do it, but it all comes down to mentalism, and people will see how you can use a system, and then you can mentally understand the system through the 7 Hermetic principles. You can take that system and make it your own and do it in a tenth of a second, a time. There was a young lady that I worked with. It was a priestess for, I think she'd been a priestess for 20 years. And it takes her 7 days to transmute a certain energy. I did it in 2.5 minutes. And she was like, how did you do that? And then I initiated her and taught her. Now she's doing it. But it's all because you take systems and you understand them and just you teach people to become their best. It's just fun to me. That's just fun teaching like that.
Good stuff.
Yep.
I do have one more question
Sure.
about the chakras. When you said, and then you open, of course, I understand you open all the chakras. I'm also a massage therapist, so, but my question on that, do you close them back up?
Oh no, I don't close them. No, don't close them. What you do is
No, I'm not talking about, closing, just, when they're wide open, from what we got taught, it's like then you pick up a whole bunch of stuff that's really not yours. So the chakras, in the way we talked about it, were supposed to be like hand size, and not just wow.
yeah, okay.
How do you? I mean, what is your take on that?
Okay, that is very true. However, when you go into the 7 Hermetic principles, that goes into mentalism. That is what you're taught, so that is your limiting belief. So what you want to do is, first of all, change the limiting belief to understand that the chakra can be wide open, and you create more light around you so that light blares out and protects you from anything else and only lets in what you allow in because you're in control over everything.
I
So
see. Okay.
it's all mentalism. Because again, it is taught, and that's true. Because you don't want to leave somebody's chakras wide open and just open for other
leave them
people.
out there. Exactly.
You don't.
That's
So
the
what?
thing,
There's
there's a lot of stuff that can get. I mean, especially when you do deal with energy touching other people, which
Right.
is not necessarily always very comfortable.
Right.
Or, issues and all that. So I remember, back in the days when in school, you kind of end up with the aches and pains the people had you massaged,
Right,
because
yeah.
nobody taught you how
Right.
to protect yourself.
Yeah, and one of the best ways to protect yourself is, number one, wash your hands with warm soap and water when you finish, and take your hands and clap them against a wall, and you transfer any energy that's inside of you into that wall. Get rid of it. Boom, transfer. Say you transfer.
All right.
I mean, it's some simple, easy techniques. I tell you, I make this stuff easy. I forget that hard. Okay, we got to go through a 12-step transition. Forget that. I'm gonna tell you easy. Wash your hands with warm soap and water and slap the wall. Bam, done. It's gone.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So what do you think about this? After I do a session, I put my hand to my heart, call my energy back in, and I just do a pushing motion
That's fine, yeah.
to give energy back.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you can always have a clear energy flow. Make sure before you put your hand on your heart that you're not taking the energy from them that might be negative and putting it on your heart. Because remember, at that point, you're a vessel, you're giving and receiving. So you're going to receive it, and now you're going to have to transmute the negative energy inside of you if you're not careful. So if you're doing any type of work, then I would say, you can use Florida water if you don't have warm soap water, Florida water, and just tap the wall, and then transfer the energy, and then open your heart. Breathe one time. You know when some amount of heart energy comes into your heart, and now push it out.
Gotcha.
And when you push it out, it goes to them. And seal them. Always close them off. Seal them. Yep.
Do you have advice for? I'm in a living situation that's temporary,
Mhm.
and one of the people there has very, very bad energy. So I've just been trying to avoid the person
Mhm.
altogether. How can I neutralize that while I'm there?
Polarization. That is like the best way to neutralize it. Like literally start seeing them in a different light. Like what's happening now, the reality is they're difficult. And you know that. You fully know that and understand it. But remember, the difficulty or non-flow is the opposite of flow. Or the difficulty is the opposite of difficulty is ease. So what you want to do is just see them in a different light, being easy. And no matter what happens, if you keep focusing on that light of them being in an easy space, that's polarity. So they're not changing, they're just vibrating at the same frequency, just at a different speed. And you're then transmuting their energy. Once you transmute that energy, continue to project that to them, and they will be completely different around you, but they might be the same way around everybody else, or the same way. There are some techniques I can show you to do that, like really quick, but I can show you that after we finish. Yeah, but that's transmutation. That's all in the 7 Hermetic principles. That's like literally, and like I was telling you, the more that you practice it, the faster you can do it. And I'm telling you, I've taught people how to do this, and they're doing it within days. If it
We didn't hear the question.
The question: how do you transmute somebody's energy that's very negative? If you're in a living situation and you're around them all the time, and you want that
Gotcha.
energy to change, so what I say is you use polarity. You polarize the energy to its opposite pole, and you focus only on that, and you continue to focus on it. No matter what, you polarize yourself in that positive, no matter what, and that's the hardest part, because that's where we have to go back into the solar plex and have the will to decide to do what we want to do and only what we want to do. That raises you to a higher polarity or a higher plane. And on that higher plane, now you are creating the effect for them by using causation. Does that make sense? Now I'm kind of teaching you how I do the 7 Hermetic principles. So I can apply them to anything. All you gotta do is just play with them enough. And you'll see, oh, I need to change this. Aha, polarize it. Now, a lot of times when you can't polarize it, then sometimes that's when the ego has to get involved. That's when you got to use your will and go into the above and below. And then you see them in the above and you change it up. But I'll talk to you about it. I'll just step into what your situation is, and I'll tell you exactly what to do and how to change it. And just focus, just do it, seriously. And you'll be surprised at how it works. And like literally in days, it'll change. I mean, I got countless numbers of people that will give you testimonies of how they've transmuted energy so fast. It's like, I can't believe that. I cannot believe it. And it's so funny because when it happens and you see it, you're like, whoa, what just happened? I was resistant and did it in like 2.5 weeks. But I'll teach you a technique to do it. All right, any other questions? No? Oh, take it all in. Take it all in. Well, thank you. Well, I want to say thank you all for joining. I appreciate it. Now, you all have a good night. I want to say Hava Shlema. The perfect love to all you guys. Be safe, and we will see you next time. Wednesday night, we're having sound bath. So hopefully you all can make it. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.